Spider-Man and Invincible have more in common than most people realize. Dorky teenager, powers that showed up without warning, a parental figure whose death shaped every choice that followed, and a stubbornness that makes both of them refuse to quit. Robert Kirkman even wrote a crossover between them in Marvel Team-Up number 14 back in 2006, and it worked because putting them in the same room felt less like a crossover and more like a character talking to himself. But that comic kept it light. Today we're looking at what would really happen if you dropped Peter Parker into the Invincible universe. To answer that, we need to start with the obvious power gap. Spider-Man's baseline strength sits around 10 tons officially. Updated sources push that higher. The Back in Black handbook puts it at 20 tons under optimal conditions, and moments of extreme stress have produced feats well beyond that. The machinery lift in Amazing Spider-Man number 33 is the classic example. Penn Station, a truck thrown hard enough to dislocate his own shoulder. When the people he loves are in danger, Peter Parker stops calculating what he can lift and just lifts it. None of that is enough to handle a Viltrumite. The average rank and file Viltrumite soldier operates at a level that Mark in Season 1 couldn't put a dent in.
Based on bone and muscle density scans, the simulations give Mark a less than 18% chance of surviving a combat encounter with her.
Mark at the start of the show hurts himself trying to damage them. Cecil's most advanced weapons treat a full-power Viltrumite like a minor inconvenience.
$400 billion for the world's most expensive nosebleed.
The Guardians of the Globe went down in minutes. Spider-Man is significantly stronger than any of those Guardians, but not by enough to change what killed them. So Peter lands in the Invincible universe as roughly what he is in his own. A street-level plus hero. Stronger and more durable than any ordinary human, capable of handling the vast majority of threats Invincible's Earth throws at him on a regular basis. The Mauler twins would be a real fight, but winnable. The Lizard League is the kind of threat Peter handles without much trouble. Even Doc Seismic, who gave Mark problems early on, is well within his range. The moment a Viltrumite walks in, the math changes completely. The Spidey sense is where things get interesting because it goes beyond a reflexes tool. It's a danger awareness system that functions close to precognition in the comics, warning Peter of threats before they materialize, giving him an edge that defies what should be physically possible based on reaction time alone.
What is it, Peter?
That's some neat trick, that sense of yours.
He's dodged bullet timers with it, navigated fights that should statistically end him. In the Invincible universe, his Spidey sense would never stop firing. This is a world where the threat level exceeds anything Peter deals with regularly in Marvel. The Mauler twins can level city blocks, the Viltrumites move at speeds that make the Guardians look frozen. The Spidey sense would be working overtime every single day, and the question is whether that high alert state wears Peter down or whether he adapts to it the way he adapts to everything else. Against a Viltrumite, the sense works as it should, but knowing something is coming and being able to do anything about it are different problems.
I thought that you could sense that with your Peter Tingle. You can dodge bullets, but not bananas?
Nolan at full speed moves fast enough that besides Red Rush, the Guardians couldn't even see him coming. The Spidey sense would tell Peter something terrible was about to happen, but he'd still take the hit, because the time difference between the Spidey sense going off and his actual reflexes is wide enough that awareness doesn't cut it when a Viltrumite is on the move. What the Spidey sense would do is keep Peter alive longer than he deserves. Turn direct shots into glancing ones by fractions of seconds that add up. Get him out of positions that should be fatal with just enough of a margin. It doesn't guarantee victory, but Peter gets slightly more chances because it makes the difference between a quick loss and hanging in there for a while, which has always been enough for him to survive. His healing runs underneath all of this. Nowhere near Wolverine, nowhere near a Viltrumite, but faster than human, durable enough that he's taken hits from the Hulk and come back, resistant to toxins in ways that have saved him repeatedly. He wouldn't shrug off a Viltrumite punch, but he could probably survive one more than they think he could before the lights went out. The webs are the other variable this universe isn't ready for.
So you like make your own web fluid in your body? I have to make my own in a lab.
Peter's synthetic webbing has a tensile strength of around 120 pounds per square millimeter and dissolves after 2 hours. At peak, it can stop a large vehicle, even a train. He's used it to hold down the Hulk, trap the Rhino, immobilize villains significantly stronger than he is. It doesn't matter how strong an opponent looks, the only thing that matters here is if they can break it before Peter changes the situation. Against a Viltrumite, they'd break sooner than usual, but small moments of reprieve would be doing a lot of work in a fight like this. A few seconds of someone being stuck, even partially, changes what Peter can set up. He doesn't necessarily need to be stronger than his opponent if he is craftier. The webs slow down beings whose primary advantages are speed and hand-to-hand combat.
Uh-oh, somebody's been a bad lizard.
Viltrumites fight by closing distance and hitting their opponents very hard. That approach stops working when your arm is suddenly webbed to a building or your legs are bound together mid-flight. The webbing buys Peter small windows and helps him keep distance. In Peter's hands, that's enough to give him the opportunity to do something the other person didn't see coming. Eye to swing from. Manhattan works. Most of the major battle locations in the Invincible universe, open fields, low density areas, wide spaces where the fight has room to breathe, work significantly worse. The Invincible universe tends to fight its big battles in places that strip away environmental advantage. That's a real limitation on what Peter can effectively pull off. What he can still do is use terrain in ways the other heroes here never think to. Mark fights by flying directly at things and hitting. Effective because Mark is very strong and very fast, but also readable.
Over the last 90 days, Mark's speed has increased 65%, his endurance 70%.
Peter's whole style is built around the idea that the most direct path is for a person who wants to get hit. For him, a typical fight includes knocking the other person off their game while he sets something up they can't counter. He'd be impossible for most villains in this universe to read because they've never encountered a fighter who moves the way he does. Wall crawling, web swinging, the spider sense, it all comes together to look random from the outside. You throw something at him and it misses. You close the distance and he's somewhere else. You commit to a pattern and 3 moves later, he's behind you doing something with the environment you didn't anticipate.
You know, in the future, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief, man.
Even some of the villains that are enormously powerful are enormously predictable. Peter would drive them insane. Peter Parker has been fighting people who outclass him physically since he was 15. He has more experience losing fights than most heroes. Dr. Octopus, Venom, Carnage, the Sinister Six, the Juggernaut, Firelord, who's a herald of Galactus. He's been on the wrong end of the power gap his whole career and he's still here. The way he compensates is creativity, patience, and the willingness to absorb punishment while building toward one moment that can change everything in his favor. Against Mark specifically, the crossover gives us actual data. The fight would be closer than pure power scaling predicts. Mark is powerful, but he's young, and his combat instincts in the early seasons are raw. He relies on toughness more than technique. Peter has been fighting since he was 15, trained briefly under Shang-Chi, and built a style around fighting people who are stronger than him.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude! You have the right to remain silent!
Mark hits harder, is faster in a straight line, flies, and is more durable. Peter is more agile, smarter in a fight, and has tools that create problems Mark doesn't know how to respond to right away. If they went head-to-head, mid-series Mark probably beats Peter after a very long fight. Late series Mark, the one who strangled Conquest with no working arms, isn't even that close. The gap between early Mark and who he becomes is massive, and that difference makes all the difference in a fight with Peter Parker. The Invincible universe doesn't protect its characters the way Marvel does. When Nolan beat Mark in Chicago, they showed every second of it. When Conquest drove his fist through Eve's body, the camera stayed on her face. When Rex Splode detonated himself, the only thing left was a scorch mark on a wall. The whole emotional deal with this show is that consequences are real, permanent, and nobody survives just because they're a main character.
He was always so confident, but also honest about his failings, so sure of himself, but the first to confess fear.
Peter Parker has been a main character for 60 years. The rule of his universe is that Peter persists. No matter what happens, he figures something out. Drop him into a world where that rule doesn't exist and it changes everything. Say Uncle Ben is still dead. The guilt, the responsibility, the driving force underneath all the jokes, that all comes with him. But the optimism Peter carries, the sense that there's always something clever left to try, gets tested differently in a world like Invincibles, where the losses are super permanent. He'd watch the Invincible War happen. 3 days of evil, alternate marks tearing cities apart across the globe. Hundreds of thousands dead. Peter has survived real tragedy in his own world.
Stay with me, stay with me. Stay with me, stay with me. You stay with me.
Gwen Stacy, the Clone Saga, Norman Osborn's worst moments, but even for him, 3 days of watching someone wearing Mark's face level city after city would probably mess him up. He'd throw himself into the cleanup. He'd make it harder on himself by focusing on each individual person rather than the scale, which is how he's always worked and always will. The difference is that Marvel eventually resets enough to let Peter function. The Invincible universe doesn't reset, Rex doesn't come back, the scorch mark stays on the wall. The people who died in the Invincible War are gone, and the show moves forward with that weight still in every room. Peter would feel that unmoving burden in a way his own universe has never asked him to. That accumulation of trauma matters because Peter's resilience has always depended on something to work toward. He processes grief by doing something with it. Solve the next problem, help the next person, find the next thing.
Handled it like a champion. Because you know what? No matter how many times I get hit, I always get back up.
The Invincible universe is generous with problems and stingy with resolutions. The cycle of loss without reset would test something in him that he's never had to grapple with. Don't get it twisted, he'd keep going, he's still Spider-Man, but the version of Peter Parker that exists 5 years into the Invincible universe would look different from the one who arrived. He would still make his famous jokes and quips. They are load-bearing for him, they keep his spirits up and help him navigate whatever he's dealing with. But underneath them would be someone who, for years, has been paying the price that the Invincible universe charges everyone, and who understands better than almost anyone what it means to keep showing up when people are in need, even in a world that doesn't give you a break. When the Viltrumite War comes, he can't follow. He can hold his breath for a few minutes, not the 2 weeks a Viltrumite manages. He can't survive open vacuum the way Mark and Nolan can.
I can't breathe.
We're too high up. You're running out of air.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The space battles, the confrontation that destroys Viltrum itself, Peter watches all of that from Earth with the frustration of being the one person who can't reach the thing that matters most. What he can do is hold Earth together while the people who can fight in space are gone. The Viltrumite War leaves Earth's defenses stretched thin. The Guardians are dealing with the aftermath of the Invincible War. Cecil's resources can't blanket the entire world, especially with so many heroes off fighting Thrag. The regular threats don't pause just because a bigger crisis is happening somewhere deep in space. Peter is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He has spent his whole career being there for people who are right in front of him, while everyone else deals with what their powers are best suited for. He'd be good at that role, and very effectively ensure that Mark and the team have a safe Earth to return to after the war. Cecil would absolutely come after Peter. He collects assets.
And as soon as he regains consciousness, he's gonna tell us everything about the Viltrum Empire and how to stop them.
And a street-smart hero with a precognitive danger sense, the ability to stick to any surface, and webbing that can immobilize almost any target regardless is definitely someone the GDA would want on the books. Peter has spent his whole career working around people who tried to own him. S.H.I.E.L.D. tried. Tony Stark took him under his wing. Norman Osborn had a federal mandate. He switched sides mid-conflict during the Superhero Registration Act when he realized what he'd signed up for. He's had Cecil's brand of partnership presented to him multiple times with smarter operators, and the answer never changes. He'd help. He just wouldn't be owned. He'd show up when there was something to fight, disappear before the debrief, and leave Cecil with no leverage and no way to make it official.
Would you consider doing a debrief with Donald, so at least we know what might be coming our way?
Of course.
Of course, that would irritate the hell out of Cecil. He's built his entire operation around having leverage over everyone. Peter would be the one person in the GDA's orbit who Cecil genuinely couldn't pin down. And that combination of useful and uncontrollable wouldn't go over well in the beginning. It would also slowly earn Peter respect. Cecil's respect is reserved for people he can't fully control, because those are the only people he considers genuine threats, and those are the only people worth taking seriously. Peter would frustrate him for years, and Cecil would have to accept that he'd rather have Peter showing up uninvited than not showing up at all, even if he'd never admit it. The relationship with Mark is the one that ends up mattering most in this universe. They meet, recognize something in each other immediately, and spend a few issues being awkward about it.
Cecil Stedman, director of the Global Defense Agency. We run teams of superheroes to protect our planet from whatever dangers might arise. You don't look like you're from around here.
Before figuring out they genuinely get along. Mark is dealing with the weight of what his father is. Peter has spent his life dealing with the weight of what he failed to do for his uncle when it mattered most. They've both been carrying something for a long time, just from different starting points. Peter would be the first person in Mark's life who understands the loneliness of a secret identity eating your real relationships alive, because Peter has been living that since high school and has the wreckage to prove it. He'd also be honest with Mark in a way the adults around him struggle to be. Cecil works angles. Nolan has spent the last 3 seasons trying to figure out how to apologize for what he did. Eve loves Mark, but she's going through her own version of everything he's facing. Peter has no agenda. He's just someone who recognizes what Mark is dealing with, because he's been carrying something very similar for so many years. Imagine a scene where Peter sits down with Mark and says, "You can't save everyone, and trying to will only destroy you."
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay?
It practically writes itself, and it hits hard, even as Peter knows that he can't even stop trying to do that very thing himself. Both of them would know it. Neither of them could change it. That's a very specific kind of friendship that the Invincible universe doesn't really have yet. Two people who understand each other completely and bond over a commitment to never giving up no matter what. Peter also offers something nobody else in Mark's world can: perspective from the other side of the career. He's been doing this for a long time compared to Mark. He knows what the long haul looks like, what it costs, what you have to protect in yourself to survive it, that you can't protect some people no matter what you do. Mark is getting all of that in real time through the worst possible experiences. Mark's version isn't any easier, and for the first time, he'd be talking to someone who actually understands what he's describing.
I know you're from another dimension. Got way too much experience with that. So, trust me, I'm the good guy here.
Instead of people who, despite loving him and wanting to help, have never felt it themselves. Peter Parker sits nowhere near the top of the Invincible universe's power rankings. The gap between him and the Viltrumite ceiling is enormous, and in a straight fight against most of the characters who matter, he loses. But the Invincible universe is full of people who give up. People who break, people who reach a limit and can't go past it. That's kind of the whole point of the series. And the people who make it through, people like Mark, are the ones who find something beyond their expected limit, a type of reserve that has nothing to do with strength, that keeps them moving when the rational thing to do would be to throw in the towel. Peter Parker has been living in that reserve his whole career. The precedent set in Amazing Spider-Man number 33, when Peter lifts the heavy machinery lift, is 60 years old and still works because it's true to something real about who the character truly is. A boy trapped under rubble, an immeasurable weight by any calculation, and Peter lifts it anyway, not because he suddenly got stronger, but because he was determined to do what he had to do. That character belongs in the Invincible universe. A world that keeps asking whether being a hero is worth the cost gets a clearer answer from Peter Parker than from almost anyone else in comics. Spider-Man in Invincible's universe would make perfect sense and be undeniably incredible to watch. Like and subscribe if you want to see more epic crossovers like this one.